My dear students, and I welcome you back to the online classes. Now, we have started the new chapter, The Enemy by Paul S. Buck, and as I told you that this chapter is the one which tells us about the most important virtue that a human being must possess. Definitely, there are a big list of virtues that makes us a person to be human, but above all, you can say that the mother of all virtues is humanity. To have compassion for someone means at least to understand the life value or the value of a human life. That's very important. Before I recall the previous videos contents, I would like you to people to know about the pre-midterm portion. Yes, very soon you people will be having your online examination, which will be your very first pre-midterm exam, and it will be conducted in an MCQ pattern. Because of that, you cannot just simply stick to the questions which are there at the end of the lesson or mid of the lesson, as well as the extra questions that have been given by me. You have to be very thorough with the lesson from the start to the end. Anything can be asked from anywhere, and because it's an MCQ type, more tougher it becomes. Losing of marks is very easier over here rather than gaining. And the portion is this time I have kept it all from the one book itself, that is Flamingo. Lesson 1, that is the last lesson. Lesson 2, the last spring. And lesson number 5, Indigo. I hope, my dear students, you will be comfortable with all these 3 chapters. And you might be thinking that why I haven't taken any of the poems till now. I'll be doing it very soon. Right now I'm concentrating on the chapters which can cover up at the earliest, and my worries are only about the writing skill, which I really wanted to have it in your physical presence so that you could have easily understood each and every point of it. Still no issues. We people together will definitely get over that problem also. And now let's continue with the chapter. Before that, a quick feedback of it. The enemy. In this story, our protagonist or the main hero is not the only one person, but still we can call him as the hero because he's the one who is being shouldered upon with the responsibility of what this lesson says, that is humanity over patriotism. Here the hero is a doctor, Dr. Sadao Hockey. Okay, he is a Japanese doctor, a very famous one of his time, and he was not only a doctor, a surgeon, but also a scientist as well. Now, this story is of the time when the war broke out between Japan and America, and they were two hostile countries, could not withstand each other, hated each other, literally they loathed each other. And so do the people of the two countries. They were total enemies of each other. Now, here the thing is that Dr. Sadao, who was a Japanese doctor, was a highly patriotic person also. Definitely, it's very important for a person to love his or her own nation first. And Dr. Sadao Hockey, we started with his house, with his father, his education, and a certain reasoning which was done over there. In the first para, it was about his house description, which is given over there, which is being said to be made of square stones, which was of low height, and it had been surrounded by bent pines, which Dr. Sadao used to climb with his bare foot, just like how the people climb to take out the coconut from the top. He had been watching those people climbing up, and he used to follow them for climbing up on those pine trees. His father used to take him to one of the islands. Actually, his house was made by the beach side, and little further means when people row on the boat or ship or something and go into the seaside, they could see one island over there, and his father quite often used to take him over there, saying that, see this island carefully, this is the stepping stone to the future for Japan. And very innocently he used to ask, wondering that, dad, where we will be stepping from them. And then his father gave a very truthful, a factful answer that nobody can limit a future. Yes, definitely future is unpredictable as well as limitless. No one can limit it. If you want, you can go beyond what is being marked and kept, and moreover it depends upon how you want to make your future. Now further we have seen in the next this paragraph that Sadao was a very obedient child, and his father was not like any other father, very playful and joyful in nature, joyful in the sense that jovial type, and spending time with Dr. Sadao. But one thing was very particular, that was he was very concerned about his child, and especially about his education. That was the reason why, when he was just 22 years old, Sadao was sent to America to learn surgery. Yeah, it's really something very funny that the two countries which were hostile, means those who were enemies of each other, America and Japan. He actually, a Japanese, went to America for learning every brief detailing about surgery. And then at the age of 30 he came back after 8 years of learning, and after learning, when he came back, it was, you can say that, a kind of dream come true, that his father before dying could hear about the you can say that popularity of his son as a surgeon as well as a scientist. In this very paragraph itself, one question's answer is there, that is why he had been held back and not sent along with the troop of Japan to the battlefield. Two basic reasons were there. First of all, as I said, he was a scientist. He was doing one kind of an experiment to bring perfection to one of the discoveries, so that the wounds of the soldiers can get cleaned up cleanly, means clearly and entirely. This was one reason. And another reason was that the old general of the Japanese army, he was under medication, and according to his health issues, he could need an operation anytime. So because of that reason, Sada was the best option for that. And these are the 2 points because of which he was held back and not sent along with the troop to the battlefield. Further, in the next this paragraph, we have seen he explained about the climatic condition, or you can say that the atmosphere around while he was standing in the veranda. He said that the clouds were rising up. If you have ever stood during the evening time, a little far from the ocean at the beach side, you can feel that the warmth and the cold waves. When it is like that, a mist is formed. And Sadao, who was standing at the veranda, he found that the mist had already covered the island which could be seen from his veranda, and only the outline of the island could be seen, and that mist was slowly coming towards, creeping, slowly moving towards his house, and very soon it will cover the pine trees surrounding his house, and later on the entire house of Sadao will be wrapped in that mist. When that happens, he will go back inside to his wife Hannah and his children waiting for him. While he was just standing and thinking about all those things, suddenly the door opened and she looked out. Who is this she over here? Obviously, his wife, Hannah. She looked out and she was wearing a woolen hurry over her kimono. I told you, kimono is a traditional Japanese dress, and hurry over here means basically that butterfly type of wings, the things comes now for the ladies, like that sort of a woolen one she was wearing over her kimono. Means when she will run, her sleeves will be flapping like the wings of the butterfly. Then she came up to him and very affectionately, very lovingly, she put her arm through his. And then she stood there, smiled and said nothing. Meanwhile, our doctor, he just ran back into the gallery of the old memories. And there he started recalling how he met Hannah in America, and he waited to fall in love with her. It's really something that is actually brings a question that how can someone wait to fall in love? Actually, the thing is that he just waited to find out that she was surely a Japanese, because if she was not a pure race of Japanese, pure race means mother and father both Japanese, his father will not accept her as the daughter-in-law, and without his father's permission he don't want to marry. So he just held back his love, waited for all those queries to be fulfilled, and then he'll fall in love with her. Sometimes he thinks if he had not married Hannah, whom he would have married, and then by chance she turned out to be a pure Japanese, and he met her in an American professor's house, because this American professor and his wife, they always used to throw party for the foreign students who feel homesick. Though the parties were a really terrible one, because rooms were small and the food was horrible, and the professor's wife very loud in talk and all, and he didn't want to. He always says Hannah that he never wanted to go to that party that night, but then suddenly he dropped in, and then he happens to see Hannah there, and he fell in love with her. Now, when he could feel her hands over his arm and he could feel the pleasure of that love, he thought about the two children they had after marriage, and he thought that maybe because they did not married without giving a prior thought of it, like the America and the Americans they do. He first of all they both finished their work for what they were there in America, and then they came back to Japan. His father met Hannah, he approved, and then according to the Japanese tradition, they both got married, and everything was very well clearly been defined between the two of them, and now they were perfectly happy, and he could feel the warmth of her cheek against his arm. Let's continue. It was at this moment that both of them saw something black come out of the mist. It was a man. He was flung up out of the ocean. Flung, it seemed, to his feet by a breaker. He staggered a few steps, his body outlined against the mist, his arms above his head. Then the curled mist hit him again. Who is that? Hannah cried. She dropped Sadaw's arm, and they both leaned over the railing of the veranda. Now they saw him again. The man was on his hands and knees, crawling. Then they saw him fall on his face and lie there. Okay, while they both were at that particular moment cherishing the moment, suddenly they felt that something black came out of the mist. Mist means dhund. Okay, so they felt that a black figure came out from the mist, and it seemed like that of a man. And also it looked like as if though the ocean has thrown that man, or threw that man out of its water, flung it. And then he stood up. He staggered a few steps. He literally pulled his body. घसीटना बोलते हैं ना. He pulled his body, and his body could be outlined, means it was the body of a man, could be outlined in the mist also. Then his arms were over his head, and then the mist again hid him. The mist covered him. He got hidden up. Hannah shouted. Cried here means that how it is not this type of a shocking cry, that kind. Who is that? She asked a question to Sadao, and she dropped that hand which was clinging to his arm. And they were standing in the veranda. So what they did, they both leaned. Leaned means like when a railing is there, you just take support of it, bend forward to see something. No? That's what here. They both leaned over the railing of the veranda, and then they saw him again. This time, the man was not standing. His hands were not over his head. His arms were not over his head, and he was not staggering. Instead of that, the man was on his hands and knees, means he was crawling. And then they felt that they saw him falling on his face, means flat on the sand, and then he was lying down there, no movement. At that time, what Sadao said, see, a fisherman perhaps washed from his boat. He ran quickly down the steps, and behind him Hannah came, her wide sleeves flying. A mile or two away on either side there were fishing villages, but here was only the bare and lonely coast, dangerous with rocks. The surf beyond the beach was spiked with rocks. Somehow the man had managed to come through them. He must be badly torn. Now Hannah had shot a question that who is that? To that Sadao gave an assumed or not a surety one, but he said that maybe it's a fisherman. And then he got washed from his boat, means maybe the boat drowned and he got separated, and the sea waves or the ocean waves brought him to the beach side. He ran down the steps, and Hannah was following him, and her sleeves were flying. I told you already, like a butterfly sleeve, so it was flapping in while she was running. And then actually somewhat a mile or two away, on either side of the beach there were fishing villages. Fishing villages means the fishermen were living in those villages. But this side where Sadao's house was there, it was a lonely coastal area, and very dangerous with rocks, so dangerous that he says that the surf beyond the beach means the water little more further when you go from the beach, it was spiked with rocks, means underneath pointed rocks were there, and if someone goes over there, means no one can save that person from getting torn with that rocks. And here this man has managed somehow to come through them. But one thing he was sure, that that man might be very badly injured. Further, they saw when they came towards him that indeed it was so. The sand on one side of him had already a stain of red soaking through. "He is wounded," Sadao exclaimed. He made haste to the man who lay motionless, his face in the sand, an old cap stuck to his head, soaked with sea water. He was in wet rags of garments. Sadao stopped, Hannah at his side, and turned the man's head. They saw the face. "A white man," Hannah whispered. "Yeah." They saw when they came toward him that indeed it was so. What was it that they have thought? Yes, they thought that if this man has managed to come through that area which is spiked up with rocks, he might be badly injured because of the spiked rocks below the water. And when they reached him, this particular worry came true, because they saw that he was flat on his stomach. On one side of him, already the sand was soaking with the red color, means the blood color. And Sadao, he exclaimed, he shouted, and he said, "He's wounded. Doctor?" So suddenly he went, means fast he went to that man who was lying motionless, means he was not making any movement, with his face in the sand. A cap was stuck to his head. It was soaked with seawater, and the condition of the cap was telling that it was a very old one. And the garments which he was wearing, means the cloth which he was wearing, it was already rags, means like a person who had not changed the clothes and had been wearing it for a long time, and it turns into kind of rags means here means chithade bolte na hum log, that only. So Sadao stopped. Hannah was standing next to him, and he turned the man's head. Okay, he had to see that who that man was, and he turned the man's head. They both saw the face, and Hannah whispered, "A white man." Yes, she whispered, "A white man." White man means Yes, got it, no? An American. White man and American. Now, what could be the possible reaction of this husband and wife who are Japanese? And Americans are their enemy. So now what's going to happen? Yet much to be studied about in this chapter. Yes, it was a white man. The wet cap fell away, and there was his wet yellow hair, long, as though for many weeks it had not been cut, and upon his young and tortured face was a rough yellow beard. He was unconscious and knew nothing that they did for him. Okay, it was a white man, confirmed. And when they have turned him, his cap, which was very old, it fell down. Okay, it means it fell away on there only on the sand, and then underneath the cap there came into visibility his yellow hair, which was very long, like as if though from weeks it's not been cut down, and then and the young and tortured face. When it has been said young and tortured face, young here means the man seems to be a young man, and tortured means he had been under some kind of torturing sessions, and it seemed like his face was rough, and yellow beard also could be seen over there. He was unconscious, and he was not knowing that two of the Japanese people were standing, one kneeling beside him and the other one standing over there. Now Sadao remembered the wound, and with his expert fingers he began to search for it. Blood flowed freshly at his touch. On the right side of his lower back, Sadao saw that a gun wound had been reopened. The flesh was blackened with powder. Sometime, not many days ago, the man had been shot and had not been tended. It was bad chance that the rock had stuck the wound. Okay, this young fellow lying down over there, an American. We already saw that the one side of this man's body, the sand was already red stained, and then Sadao suddenly remembered about the wound from where the blood might be oozing out, and then being a doctor, his expert fingers started moving over the body in search of the wound, and then his fingers struck that place, and the blood started flowing freshly. Actually, he found that on the lower back, right hand side, he saw that there was a gun wound which has reopened, and the flesh was blackened with powder. You might be knowing that when a man is shot with a bullet, the hole that is made, that corners of that hole gets burned up because of the gunpowder. So it has turned black, and it seemed that from many days this particular gunshot wound had not been tended, not been attended, not been taken care of. And now in the water, it so happened that the rock has opened the wound. That spiky rocks might have gone into the wound and might have opened it out. I'll give a halt to our video, and hopefully you all are going through the various videos, and please, this is my humble request, that purchase the books concerned with the various subjects and go through the lessons thoroughly and be prepared for the forthcoming examination. Till then, stay home, stay safe.